This is a tutorial on how to use Geogebra to do some mathematical modeling. Couple things on how to use the basics of Geogebra to begin with. This button here, if you roll over any of the buttons, it gives you a description of what it does, and there's also drop-down menus. There's all sorts of fun things you can do, creating polygons, circles, ellipse, angles, slope, etc. This button here allows you to move objects around, and then this button here allows you to move the screen around. It turns into the hand, and it also allows you to adjust the axes if you roll over them, which is a useful feature. You also want to turn on the grid. That will help you kind of see where some of the points are. So in order to do some modeling, one method of doing it is to insert a picture into Geogebra, which you can do by going to Edit and Insert Image. We get this image, and you can then go back to the Move object and fit that right in there, and you'll see that it clicks in pretty nicely. You can adjust the size of the image and get a little better resolution if we do that. Okay, so I'm going to try and model this now. If you're doing something physical, like a picture of something physical, you might want to consider having like a ruler in your picture so that you can match it up with the grid marks for scale. But this is just an example, so I don't have that. I'm going to try and model this wave. When I think of waves, I think of trigonometric functions, so I'm going to start with that. It is easier, you can see down in the input bars where I'm writing things, it's easier to use function notation. You can use y equals for the equations you enter, but it's generally easier to enter them using function notation. And then I'm going to give it some constants that I can adjust. So now, if you look at what I've done here, I've included the stars for multiplication. You don't always have to do that, but since, for example, this a is right next to the sine function, the computer would have thought it was arc sine, so I had to put the star in between it to indicate multiplication. You can also notice that all the letters are in gray, which means that after I hit enter, I'm going to get options to turn them into sliders, A, B, C, and D. And I'm going to create sliders, and you can see that the graph comes up, and then I can use these to adjust things. Now, a couple things about the functionality of the sliders. If you go to here where it says slider and click on that, and you roll over it so the arrow appears, that allows you to move them around, which can be useful. If you click on the wrong space, it's going to try and create a new slider for you. Okay, and also useful to know is if you're clicked on slider and you roll over here and then you right click, you can go to object properties of the slider, and you can adjust the interval that it slides between. Maybe I'll do it 0, and you can also adjust the increment, and you can adjust the increment depending on your needs. If you, for example, are trying to model population, then your maximum will probably be in the millions, hundreds of millions maybe, and then your increment might not be at 0.01 people. It might be in the thousands or 10,000s or 100,000s, depending on what kind of function you're modeling it with. So you can adjust those things. That's really useful. And then I'm going to see what these sliders do. If I adjust A, you can see it adjusts the amplitude. And then if I adjust B, and again, actually we can take a look at this here. Watch what happens over here underneath function as I adjust B. It actually adjusts this number here, which was B in the equation. And you can see that in the yellow box below my pointer, it tells us where the constants that I have sliders are for. So I can adjust that. That adjusts the period. And then this is going to be a horizontal shift, and D is going to be a vertical shift. So I'm going to get this up here. I could have used the cosine function, but the sine function will work just fine for our purposes. Now, I actually did something in the wrong order. One thing that you want to do before you start creating the equations is you should start putting some points that are going to represent where your graph will go through. And then you can use those points for an analytical approach later. This is just to help, using technology to help you visualize things. So to put points in, you go to View and then Spreadsheet, and that will give you this spreadsheet, which is awfully like Excel. And then you can push equals, just like you do in equations in Excel, brackets, and then let's see here. Maybe this is going to start at 0, 2, and then enter, and you see we get a point there. And then one other thing that I want to do is I want to, if I click in here, then I can, and I right click on the picture, I can adjust its opacity. If I go to color, and then I can adjust its opacity here, and that will give me, you can see the grid lines a little bit better. So let's see here, this is at like 1.5. So I click in there. Okay, and that comes pretty close there. Maybe at 2, 2.2. That's pretty close. And then at 3, maybe 2.5. No, that's a little bit low. Oh, that's too high. That's better. Okay, and then maybe 3.82. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I should have done that first. But the process now would be for me to get this graph to fit through as many points as I can. You can play around with that. Adjusting the amplitude, etc., etc. Okay. That's pretty close. I've got it going through 1, almost through 2, 3, and that's pretty close there. You can there we go. One thing you can do too is you can, once you've created your model, you can look at percentage error or differences between the points you've created and that kind of thing. Okay, now that's not perfect, but that's pretty close. Next thing I'll show you how to do is how to adjust this so that we're only taking a piece of that function. So I'm going to go here and I can adjust it. So f of x, and I'm going to put if, and then I'm going to use this bracket, and I'm going to give it an interval so I can restrict its domain. In other words, restrict the x values that it's valid for. So I'm going to go from 0, so x is going to be greater than 0 and less than 4, comma. Okay, so see what I've done there? I put the domain that I wanted, and then I'm going to put other brackets around here. And then I put the if in front of it. And you can see that it cuts it off there. So that will help you adjust things to have just pieces of functions. Now there's some other cool things you can do if you want to, like, for example, make a circle. You can always roll over things and it gives you instructions. He says circle with center through point, select center point, then point on circle. So I'm going to select a center point here, and then you can see that it's going to let me create a circle. And then it actually gives me an equation for it as well, which you could then manipulate and see if you could make that fit. Or you could try and write another piecewise or part of a function that fits in there, and you can try and put things together. So anyway, that is an introduction to